Thank you for joining us. This is Live with Miami's Community News, and today we have some special guests here. We have Reverend Tom Capo and Carly
Poloskey.
Poloskey.
There you go.
We have two current Unitarians, one former Unitarian, all right? But still, some of that blood still is there. So people have always asked me, and I'm sure they ask both of you, what are Unitarian Universalists? And there's a short answer and there's a long one. So pick one or something in between. And we only have 30 minutes.
Okay. Well, let me start it with it this way. That Unitarian Universalism is a pluralistic faith. In other words, we have people from all different belief systems, backgrounds, some without any beliefs, some who are searching. So you could have Christians and Jews and atheists, agnostics, pagans, all in the same sanctuary together. And then they're exploring what their belief system is and trying to live that in the world, go back out in the world and live that, and then come back, and we continue that process of sharing with one another our beliefs and how that works in the world in this kind of container of what we call our 7 principles, which are, justice, equity, and compassion, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, democracy, the interdependent web of all existence. So within that kind of framework that we're exploring spirituality together. As a matter of fact, I'm teaching a class called Building Your Own Theology, which is within that framework where people can come together and explore what their beliefs are, begin to figure out how to live them in the world. And really, so much of the time people are unsure of what their beliefs are, especially when they come to it. It used to be people would come as coming out of another religion into Unitarian Universalism. Nowadays, we see people who have no religious background, who weren't brought up in a church, and they're just wondering, is belief necessary? How does that work in terms of how I live my life? All that.
So, Carly, you are the director of religious exploration. So
Exactly.
do people go to you and say, let's explore? Is this all working together?
Exactly. So my role is most particular for our families, our children and parents. And our parents, many of them come, as Reverend Tom said, with their own traditions or maybe a multi-faith family. Our tagline really is nurturing families in a multi-faith world. So I, especially with my adolescents, my teens, I try to structure experiences that expose them to all kinds of spiritual practices, belief systems, service opportunities that allow them to discern their own values and do that in a developmentally appropriate and fun way. So they kind of figure out where they are in the world and how they want to show up.
So Unitarians have taken the lead role many times over history. So why don't you tell us some of the things that Unitarians, in particular, who are the tiniest part of the totality of religions, how they got to the head of the line or close to that in so many social issues?
Well, I guess I'd start with saying that if you come to a Unitarian Universalist church, there are really a few foundations that you become exposed to. One is that we are a faith where people explore their own religion, their own spirituality. But two, that we encourage people to, you don't have to, we encourage people to make a difference in the world in a positive way. It's kind of a core belief of ours. And so, it's hard to throw a stone within some kind of a nonprofit, not find a Unitarian someplace in there, because Unitarians get involved in social justice, social action, social service, and we've been involved in the beginnings of the public school system in the United States. We're involved in the beginning of the Red Cross. There were 3 presidents of the United States who were Unitarian Universalists.
That's out of how many? That's out of 45?
Yeah.
45?
We're disproportionate in that respect.
Yes.
And in Miami, as a matter of fact, our nursery at the time was the first integrated nursery in all of Miami-Dade County.
So my father, as I mentioned before, he was active in the First Unitarian Church, and he was, at that time, he was with WEDR. Black radio station, still is. He had a show called The Gospel Hour, and all his clients were black. And so we grew up in this very mixed neighborhood that it was like, it just was. It wasn't mixed, it was just what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I frequently remember if people would say degrading things about black, he would just stand up and say, listen, my grandfather was black. And it would sort of quiet them down. And when Ron, that was his name, he took us or me to St. Augustine to watch the riots, the marches that were going on. And then that was really sort of spirited, if you will, with him and getting lots of that support at the First Unitarian Church. And it was a delight to see that. And as I look back, I see this band of whippersnappers. Boy, they didn't get, and if my memory wasn't failing at the moment, I could name a half a dozen more people. They were there fighting for the cause. For at that point, it was mostly blacks, and I'm not so much for women yet, but for sure with the blacks and trying to equal things.
So it's how we started here in Miami. We started as it turns out, the Jewish community saw the KKK coming into Miami, and they said, we need a Unitarian Universalist church here in order to help fight the KKK back in the 30s.
So who said that? Who the Unitarian churches from across the country said we need it down
No,
here?
no. The Jewish community here in Miami said we needed, when they saw the KKK coming in, we need a Unitarian church to be with us in this fight against the KKK.
A multi-faith space.
So 30 years later, when I was growing up there, most of the people happened to be Jewish, right? So we call themselves and myself finally Unitarians, right? And I'm sure that's a common.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Good. Whew. All right. And one of the great things that came out of my father's experience with that and being around other people is to be able to have conversations about race without being racist. And that's certainly something that I explore frequently and invite people to express themselves so they can see what they're saying and what they're feeling, even if it's on a subconscious level.
We're still doing that. I mean, we have a Decentering Whiteness book club, and we've been exploring a lot of different books that have come out on the bestseller list. How to be an anti-racist, for instance. Most recently, we're reading My Name is, oh my goodness, George Floyd. That's what it is.
Foreman's this guy.
That's right, Foreman's this guy.
I was watching him last night, by the way.
But it's a fascinating book on how a person's life, a black person's life, is impeded along the way, despite their intelligence, despite their ambitions, and despite everything.
We see that all the time, and during the pandemic, I probably interviewed maybe 20 African Americans specifically for that conversation. Carly, you're so young. How did you get involved in such a very heady organization?
Well, it's a funny circuitous story, as pretty much everybody at UU Miami, as we call it, has. You can walk up to somebody and they have their own, multifaceted story. My partner is the director of music, so I got involved at UU Miami.
Okay.
So I got involved subbing for her, and one of the previous volunteer teachers for RE, Religious Exploration, said, hey, you have professional experience with kids, and you're very open-minded, you're into social justice work. Sounds like you would be a very good candidate for this. You have experience in youth groups and that kind of thing. And as many things go, I said, okay, well, I'll read some books, get some training, and go ahead.
What was your religious background before?
I grew up in the Catholic Church.
And you said, okay, I'm going to go try this out.
Yeah. Well, I think in college and being a musician, often, you accept gigs in synagogues, in all kinds of different denominations of Christianity. So I already had that kind of pantheistic exposure through music, and it's kind of a universal human experience. So that's already kind of had the door wedged open for me to enter a space that was very open-minded.
Years ago, I took a class, A Course in Miracles. And after about the 8th session, I said to my wife, I think it's about religion. Because I had no religious background. The religion, if you will, was non-religious, right? Church, if you will. And I said, and I think I got it. And then I said to myself, so, you really think you got it? And if you got it, how much of it do you think that you got? And so there is that exploration that continues on. And so my question to you, Reverend Tom, is do we keep exploring that?
Oh, most definitely. I don't know. I don't know if you're aware of kind of stages of faith. It was a book put out by Presbyterian minister. His name was James Fowler, and he talked about stages of faith that we go through throughout our lifetime, and they were kind of like connected with Erik Erikson's stages of psychological development. But more recently, within Unitarian Universalism, we've come up with this different theory where you're exposed to something, you have some awareness or wisdom from that, you share that with others, and then that process continues being everything we're exposed to, everything we learn, every new wisdom we take on and we hear from other people is an opportunity for us to grow and learn and change. So we're always in that process rather than a development that starts at point A when you're a child and ends when you reach a certain age or a certain level of development. This process is ongoing and ever developing.
When I was at the First Unitarian Church many years ago, it was a slight connection to the here and now.
Mm-hmm.
When I got married, and my wife said, "No, we're gonna raise the kids Jewish," and okay, and then one day, and I always knew I came from a Jewish background. Well, my father really never liked that, and it was really never a conversation. So the gentleman walks in and he goes, "We're related." I said, "Well, you got some money for me?" And he brings this whole history in. He says, I'm looking, I said, my aunt is here. She's about your age. I bring her up. Sure enough, when they were kids, they played together. He was 80 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So he brings this whole background. Where my grandfather was born in Ukraine and was Orthodox Jew, I do feel a connection to that more so, even though it's been a shorter lifespan of being Jewish, right, than I did before. One, I was much younger. Two, what I recognize is that connection to yesteryear. How do Unitarians have, or do they have, how do you get that connection?
That's a very interesting question. I grew up Catholic as well, and so when I left the Catholic faith, I kind of left everything behind and said, I turned my back on it because I had a really bad experience near the end. Now, over a process, I call myself a Buddhist, panentheist, humanist, Unitarian Universalist.
The alphabet soup there.
It's an alphabet soup. But because the panentheist part is kind of this idea of spirit in all things, and that is really reaching back to my Catholicism, the sense of divinity that still is with me, but is not a Catholic sense of divinity, but more of a universal divinity. And the Buddhist tradition, I very quickly got into the rituals and the understanding of the world as, through the study of I have to get this a second, the Buddhist tradition of non-permanence and of suffering and that things pass, and then the meditation really appealed to me, and then the humanism, which is more about how to live in the world as we are right now. And so all of those pieces kind of fit together for me, and that might change.
I think something we also find with to your point, our families is they come to us with their own stories and they want to hold on to some of that tradition you speak of. The, grandma and around the holidays we would do this, but they don't want the sometimes divisive dogma, that exclusionary part of some of our traditional religions. So that's why they come to us, where they can hold on to what they love about their family history and also embrace a larger community that is maybe a little more inclusive.
And we do want to be accepted, and we do want to be liked, and we want to have that. I was at a funeral a couple of years ago. The Reverend Pastor happened to be a lady. She said, "We're going to have a moment of silent meditation. Feel free to join us on whatever level you would like." And I went, how welcoming is that? It's like, okay, I'm in. I'm in. All right. I said, that's terrific. And so that really opened it up so that I could enjoy that moment rather than having some prayer said that I was adverse to.
Well, and that's kind of how we approach the worship service on Sunday mornings. I say, we enter a time of prayer and meditation. Each of us has our own way of entering that space, and then I usually read something or provide a meditation for them, and people can take away from that what feels right to them. we are always trying to be as welcoming as we can to people who come in. You know, we have it's interesting. I was meeting with a group of interfaith leaders the other day, and we have a Black Lives Matter sign in the front of our church. And one of the members was an African American, and she said, you know, the moment I saw that, I know this was a safe place. And so the little ways all throughout the church to try to help people feel like this is a space where they can feel at home, you know, that they will be honored and welcomed.
And along that line, I meditate not frequently, but
Mhm.
not frequently enough. But one of the things that I learned is, as you're meditating, you will always hear noise.
Mhm.
And you have to make a decision what you're going to do with that noise.
Very true.
Let it go by, or you can hold on to it if you want to, and then you won't be meditating anymore. You're going to be listening to noise. And so I sense that is still the case in the Unitarian society, to where you can listen to what you like. And what I'm sort of hearing is, isn't it great you can have a conversation about it?
Absolutely.
And have a conversation that honors and respects each person. So we could have extremely different opinions about, say, abortion, or about prayer in schools, or whatever. And we could have that deep discussion about that without being angry or aggressive toward each other, and come away from that a deeper relationship with one another.
So tell us why you're still there at UU Miami.
I love working with the kids. Some of these kids, and I think as a product of this multifaceted community, they are really encouraged to lean into their imagination. They're empowered to learn through doing, learn through service. So these are some of the most enthusiastic kids. They're the ones, you know, getting the scholarships in National Honor Society. Not that that's the goal, but that's just them living their UU values. So it's really the inspiration I get from them. It's a symbiotic relationship.
So here we have young people who, they're friends, probably none of them are Unitarians outside the church there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. How do they adapt to that when their friends are going to the Baptist or Catholic or the Jewish, whatever, and here they are, the 1% or less, right? By the way, I heard that the Unitarian Universalists donate the least amount of their it's half of 1%. Half of 1%.
Those are two different issues. If you want to
Same.
talk
On
about
Sundays, you mean?
Yeah.
if you want to talk about the kids, I'll talk about the money, but that's okay. It's a different issue.
On the kids, how do they do that? Because when I was young, people would go, "What's Unitarians?" I go, "I'm not really sure." Right? So what do they learn there that helps them deal with themselves, and when people ask them about where they go on Sunday, if anywhere?
They learn at a developmentally appropriate, in a developmentally appropriate way, those principles that Tom alluded to. So they learn tolerance, they learn to speak up for themselves, they learn how to be a good friend. So I think they demonstrate their Unitarian Universalism through action, through kindness. And our teens, once they get to that coming of age time, we do this program that we ran last year where they develop their own credo, their own statement of personal beliefs. And through that process, they came up with a whole essay at the end where they could proudly state, okay, this is what I believe, and I'm embraced by my UU community for sharing these values.
What a great foundation that is for them and their future.
And critical thinking,
Yes,
yeah.
and if they get really lucky in their lives, they're going to be able to live that and to be able to move forward and maybe pass it on to somebody else as well.
So the money part is, we don't have a tithing like many other churches do. We encourage people to give what feels right for them based on, you know, their experience together in this, you know, loving, beloved community of faith. And you know, people do give more as they're there longer. Some people are unable to give, and we don't say, you know, if you can't give anything, doesn't mean you can't be part of this community. We embrace all and encourage all to be with us.
So what new projects or old projects are coming up soon?
Well, our newest initiative that we're doing is a parent and caregiver program. It's entitled Parents and Caregivers as Sexuality Educators. So as we know, there's a lot of heated debate in our county, in our state, throughout the world, I know, go figure, about this topic of what should and shouldn't be said. And at the end of the day, the parents, the trusted adults in a child's life, are the ones that have the great opportunity to be able to dispense scientifically accurate and affirming sexuality information to their children. So this program is structured to help parents have those conversations that might be awkward, that might be a little uncomfy, because we might come to it with our own baggage, our own notion of things being taboo.
I was talking to somebody I know, and I said, you have any grandkids? I said, how's your son? Oh, fine. And you have a daughter? Yeah. Oh, it's off to college? Well, she's transitioning. And I'm thinking, okay, he's talking about from living in the house to college. I go, did you hear what I said, Michael? I go, yeah. She's on hormones now, Michael. Oh, I was so stunned, all right? One, that I heard what he said, and I was thinking that, but who am I? We're having a conversation about going off to college, right? And I saw him about a week later. I said, come here, I'm going to talk to you. I said, I got to tell you, I was so stunned that it just threw me off, and my apologies for not engaging you, because that's what he was trying to do, all right? Instead, I said, oh, that's great, okay, see you later. And we realized that is more common than not, all right? I hear it frequently, and that the parents and the kids need to be able to figure out how they're going to respond and have that kind of conversation.
So we're what's called a welcoming congregation. That means we have had classes and we continue to discuss issues of gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer people in the world, and in our congregation there are many of them, but it's one thing for people to be present, it's another for them to feel welcomed, and to feel like this could be part of their life. This community could be part of their life. And so, while we have done some training and had discussions with one another so that people do feel welcome, we've instituted some changes. We've done some things like including pronouns as we introduce the service. And that may seem like a little thing, but it's a way of helping people feel like, yes, we affirm that your chosen pronouns, the way you see yourself, is what is valued here in this community.
So often we are shocked, right, about what we see. In the last 2 years, the number of African Americans and Haitians and people of color on commercials is like up 4 or 5 times, right? And at first it was like, I was really put off, right? And I went, now I don't even notice it. It's it's like normal, all right? And we looked at the different couples, and the white guy, the black girl, whatever it is, it gets all in this melting pot. And it's no longer an issue when I see it. At first it was like, no, I want somebody that looks like me there. And I think that's important when you go to the Unitarian Church or wherever, that there's something that we can connect to.
Representation is definitely important. And also, even if you aren't someone of a marginalized identity, what we want to help the parents and them to pass on to their children is that it's okay to have conversations, it's okay to have questions, and I'm kind of there to facilitate a conversation for the parents to be like, okay, what about this, as you said, makes me uncomfortable? Let's unpack that and then move forward.
I think that's really important. I really want to just emphasize that just because we are a liberal religious organization, it doesn't mean that if a family is going through, one member of a family is going through a transition, not everybody in that family is going to know how to deal with it effectively. And these kind of conversations are really important for the health of the whole family and the community.
So I was having a conversation with, happened to be an African-American lady, and I said, what do you do? She told me she worked at a local radio station. I said, so my father worked there many, many years ago. And she just started crying, out of control crying. She says, Michael, when I walk in to a store, my experience is different than yours. I heard that so often over the last 3 years as we interviewed more and more people of color and more women. And we realized when people look like me don't have that problem that we know of, all right? But so many people do. And so my question gets down to, how does religion play into all of this, and especially the Unitarian religion, right? How does that help people be better?
Well, I think one of the things that you're pointing out right now is that I don't teach people what to believe. I encourage them to look within. I also present information to them that might allow them to grow. So, for instance, what you're talking about, as people become more aware that there are different ways of seeing the world and experiencing the world, that we bring those to bear. We talk about them. I preach about them. We have classes about them. We read books about them, so that we are open to seeing the world differently, not accepting what some might call a white supremacist kind of culture or a white privileged culture, but seeing that the world is, especially in this country, has multi-races and multi-religions and multicultures, and everybody brings something valuable to the party.
And Carly, I was in a religious class. I went at the last class to pay homage to the instructor. And there was the next class who's going to start. And this is how it was started. If you're in this class, you believe such and such. In my head, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like the assumption that you had to do that, believe that, it was very high level, but that allowed that class to be able to say, mankind was not involved in this. It was created by this over here, but so you can't question it because you already said you believe such and such. When I heard that, I just wanted a complete shutdown, and I recognized it.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he telling me that? I'm here to honor him for his months of work with people that I know, and he's telling me that. So, and when I raised my hand, I said, I got a question. Say that God speaks to people. I said, when these people that are schizophrenic, these poor people, and they kill people, all right? And they say, God told me to do it. Explain that to me. And there was no, there was, whatever the explanation was, it was not an intellectual conversation. It was more of a theological message. That was one of the things I did like about the Unitarian Church is you go in, right? And one of the songs that I remember singing, "We Would Be One." I looked at it, when I knew you were coming over, I looked it up. I saw it on my phone, but it was way too small for me to have to read it. So what are some things that the congregants and the children and the families like about the Unitarian Universalist Miami?
Well done. I know it's a mouthful. I think they love coming together with people of different backgrounds to enjoy music, to enjoy games. The children's curriculum this year focuses very much on the natural world, embracing kind of an indigenous perspective to really honor and steward our local South Florida ecosystems, our water ecosystems, the natural reefs. And our teens come together really for that community service element of learning about the social issues that affect Miamians and learning about how they can get involved even at a young age and become young leaders for us.
That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And we have 2 minutes left, Reverend Tom. So tell us why you're here, not here, but not here, but over there. All right, why are you doing this?
Well, I've been a Unitarian since I left the Catholic Church in 1979, and I've been drawn to it. Initially, I was drawn to it for the spiritual growth part of it, but more recently, the social justice part is so important, making a difference in the world, being a voice for those who are liberally religious out in the community, working toward, the understanding that we can be caring and loving to one another despite our diversity and differences of thought. And really, that's so important to me now. And our congregation is really focused on how we can make a difference in the world right now. We're just now looking at doing a backpack project for kids who don't have food on the weekends, putting healthy food in their backpacks to take home on the weekends. So, we're looking at not only social justice, but ways of really helping people in the community.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Continued
you.
success to you, Carly. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Terrific handshake. Folks, we're going to look right over. Folks, thank you for joining us. And Andres, thank you for producing the show. And